Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the City of Edmonton's first ever electric and hydrogen vehicle expo. A really quick announcement. If anyone left their phone in a Ward Evolution's car, we'll put it in our staff room, but just come let us know over at the tech table and we can get that for you. So my name is Erin Sarabin, and I'm the founder of Tycoon Events. We've been very fortunate to be part of the planning of this exciting event, and I also have the privilege of being your MC today, so you'll see me a lot. We are grateful to be hosting this event at the Edmonton Expo Center, honoring and giving thanks to the many nations on whose traditional and historic lands Edmonton was founded, including the Cree, Dene, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, and Nakota Sioux. We acknowledge and embrace the fact that we are on the traditional land of Treaty 6 territory and the traditional Métis homeland. We acknowledge all of the diverse Indigenous peoples whose ancestors' footsteps have marked this territory for centuries, from First Nations, Métis, Inuit, and now settlers from around the world. We do this to create awareness that we are all treaty people and to show recognition and respect for the Indigenous peoples and the traditional territories on which we live, work, and play. We take our responsibilities with Indigenous peoples seriously, and together we call upon all of our collective honored traditions and spirits to work in building a great city for today and future generations. So, to kick off today's programming on the Change for Climate Education stage, I'd like to welcome Daryl Petrus up on the stage to join me introducing our first session, Amp Up Your Career, Opportunities in Electric and Home Electrification, and all of our panelists. As the Director of Business and Community Development, Daryl works with individuals, startups, scale-ups, and the corporate sector to develop strategies and programs to support innovation-intensive entrepreneurship and bolster the commercialization of innovation arising from the Edmonton region. Daryl is a business development and technology transfer leader with nearly 2 decades of experience facilitating the commercialization of innovation and managing innovation-based businesses. Much of his career has focused on realizing economic value from innovation generated by universities and private companies working in all facets of the agricultural, energy, IT, and health sectors. Commercial success includes partnerships related to energy distribution, communication technologies, newly registered plant varieties, clean technology, and animal health. Numerous closed commercial deals have generated a strong return on investment for stakeholders, including startups and multinational companies. As a founder, business owner, and business coach with years of experience as a service provider focused on growing startups, Daryl has extensive knowledge of programs that accelerate the development of early and growth stage companies. His background is complemented by years of not-for-profit and for-profit board experience working with technology companies and a small investment fund. Everyone, welcome Daryl.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to moderate this afternoon's panel session on amping up your career in the electric vehicle and hydrogen space. As Erin mentioned, I work for Innovate Edmonton, and I want to share a little bit more about Innovate Edmonton and a little bit about the innovation happening in our community. I want to thank Erin for the excellent land acknowledgement. Appreciate that, Erin. Imagine for a second that you have an idea for a new product or service, and you think this might be an opportunity for a business, and you share that idea for your product or service with your friends and family, and you get mixed feedback. They say, well, that's really clever, that sounds ingenious, but what does it take to start a business? Wouldn't that take a lot of time, perhaps a lot of money? Where would you find your customers? A lot of what if, and maybe even a little discouragement. You might decide that you need some additional answers, some support. Is there a community you can turn to? There certainly is here in Edmonton. There's a strong innovation and tech community that can help you, guide you, and mentor you. And that's squarely where Innovate Edmonton works. Edmonton, it's the fastest growing tech and innovation sector in North America. Our ecosystem, that tech innovation ecosystem, is valued at more than $500 million at the moment, and we're number 4 in affordable talent in North America. We make the top 25 list. This is a lot to celebrate here. This is huge. We're talking about US and Canada. We make the top 25 in a couple of areas when it comes to these early stage company opportunities. One is with regard to the amount of funding our early stage companies, these entrepreneurs, these founders are receiving in total in our community. It's currently at $134 million. And that early stage investment, where do those answers come from? Where does that money come from? That community can direct you to those answers and that investment. And that early stage investment now from a third party arm's length is over $500,000. Lots of support, lots of activity. Among our strengths in Edmonton are deep tech and artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data, analytics, and life sciences. And if you don't identify with the deep tech community, no worries. We still want to chat with you if you have something innovative and are thinking of starting a business. What does Innovate Edmonton do? We position Edmonton as an inclusive global innovation capital, a city of innovators taking on global challenges. These are things we're well known for. Climate emergency. Electric vehicles help address climate emergency for sure, Edmonton being a leader in this direction. Food security, public health, digital inclusion, social justice and reconciliation, and that's just to name a few. Innovate Edmonton, through our entrepreneur-facing programs, free programs I might add, support innovation-intensive companies from napkin attraction and beyond. What does that mean? I don't want to get too jargony, but we want to work with entrepreneurs who have an idea that might lead to a business opportunity and help them find their first customers, help them develop their prototype, and help them move to financing if they should need it. We're here to support them. We do this through 5 core pillars. Programming, I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. We do this through positioning. We want to celebrate this community. We want to share the stories of the innovators. We want to share the stories of the stakeholders in innovation. We do this through media, through our own marketing communications. Placemaking. We're developing a physical space where entrepreneurs, like-minded entrepreneurs, can join us and celebrate innovation. The community can join us and celebrate innovation. And we can deliver programming and we can deliver partnerships. Partnerships with organizations that support innovation. Just to name a few, Health Cities, Edmonton Global, Explore Edmonton. These are all community stakeholders who are driving innovation forward, supporting the risk takers, the innovators. And we do this through the partnership and leading to pathfinding. Pathfinding helps us help you navigate the supports that are available. Again, if you think that maybe the innovation space or the tech space is just for those who have a PhD and deep expertise, not the case. We can help you find the support you need. Programming, I will not list all these programs that are on the box here on the slide in great detail, but I will say that this is the total of our programming. And again, helping those early stage entrepreneurs identify the concept they're working on, the challenges they'll face, the customers, and some of that is classroom or cohort-based training, online, a lot of it, and then we deliver one-to-one support. We recognize that founders, new entrepreneurs, are limited, like many of us, by time, talent, and treasure. And we want to solve those 3 elements for them. That's where our programming focuses. So the initial question might have been, is there a community you can turn to? Just last year, in less than 12 months, because we're a relatively new organization, we served over 1,700 unique founders and companies. So there is a community. Thank you. Now it's my pleasure to turn it over to the true experts today. I'm going to first introduce Dr. Jim Sandercock, NATE Chair of the Alternative Energy Technologies Program. Dr. Sandercock provides instruction on energy transitions, project leadership, project management, and leads an industry-based capstone course at NATE. Dr. Sandercock speaks regularly on renewable energy, energy efficiency, and advanced building construction. He is a board member with the Alberta Council for Environmental Education and Solar Alberta. Dr. Sandercock and his family are currently renovating their 1940s home to be net zero. And we will hear more about this experience this afternoon. We're looking forward to that. He's in fact at the Expo, dare I say, shopping for an electric vehicle. Not to put you on the spot. Welcome, Dr. Sandercock.
Well, hello everybody. I'm going to be talking a little bit about career solutions and some climate careers that could go with that. And then after I've done that, Joel's going to talk a fair bit about it as well. So I'm going to kind of set the stage and take a giant zoom out and set the scene for some of the different technologies that can be involved. So one of the big things that we're seeing is a lot of change in how energy and electricity is being made available to people, and that could be used to power a car. But the other thing that's really exciting is that the vehicles can now become integrated and become part of the home as well. So I'm going to talk about that. One of the most usual suspects in this entire thing is going to be solar. And it's actually kind of nice. I've seen a number of our alumni from our program here telling people about solar today. And the really great thing about solar is you can put it on houses and you can put it on fields, and it's essentially the same equipment, whether you're doing a 10 kilowatt system or a 5,000 kilowatt system, like a 5 megawatt project. The really exciting thing about solar is it's dropped in price really quickly and really significantly to the point where it's one of the cheapest ways on the planet to actually make electricity. Now, the other thing that's exciting is that with batteries, we've seen a similar decrease in the cost of batteries as well, which is why we have available to us so many choices today for different electric vehicles that you could be charging at home or elsewhere. Oh yeah, and there's an electric vehicle. I don't know if you've ever heard of this company, Tesla. So the other thing though is that your buildings can actually be quite different as well. A lot of people are concerned, are we able to actually switch to a renewable energy future? And the big question is, how efficient are our buildings going to be? So if we can use less energy, we can still have warm showers and cold beer. That's what we really want. But if we use less energy to achieve that, that's obviously a better objective. So there's different things we can also do with heating as well. We can have better insulation in our houses. We can have better envelopes. We can go from burning fuel to maybe using heat pumps that have a higher efficiency. And what you really need to do for that is build a building with radically better efficiency. This is a picture of a building in Germany that I saw. It uses 1/20th the energy to heat and cool than a building in Alberta. And just to make sure you don't think this is only possible in Germany, these are two of the houses here in Alberta that are also able to be net zero. The one on the right is by Landmark Homes, and you could just go in and say, I'd like to buy a house, I'd like it to have this many square feet, I'd like the dishwasher package, and I'd like the marble package in pink in the kitchen, and oh yeah, could I have net zero? Now, a big thing that happened, and this is why there's some really exciting possibilities, is there's a big deep freeze in Texas a few years ago. Who remembers that hitting the news? And there's thousands, if not millions of people without power. And the interesting thing was that Ford had a vehicle with a power plant in it, and you could plug in extension cords to the power plant of the diesel or the gas F-150, and people were running these cords into their house to keep their house from freezing up. And other people were taking their Teslas and going into camping mode and doing the same thing. And all of a sudden, those companies realized, especially Ford realized, oh my goodness, we could actually do something called grid to house, where if the grid goes down, your vehicle could actually feed electricity into the house. Now, some companies are still saying that would void the warranty, and other companies are saying, yes, that's a fantastic way for us to support our clientele. So this is the example. If you had an EV, and you had a charger, and you had a house, normally the electricity would run from the house towards the car, but with some vehicles, the electricity could actually run from the car back to the house. So our program at NATE, it's a 2-year program. We've got 4 major pillars. Energy efficiency for buildings is one of the areas we teach about. We teach about renewable power, including electricity generation with solar and wind, but also about energy storage. Another category we've got is about integrating various systems together, hybridizing systems together and getting to work together. If you want to ask about potential jobs, ask me afterwards or in the question period, but I've got sort of a list of some of the different types of jobs people that have graduated from our 2-year program have come out with. And so thank you so much for listening to that, and if you've got questions after Joel, that would be great.
Thank you, Dr. Sandercock. It's my pleasure now to introduce our next panelist, and dare I say expert that we are looking forward to chatting with, Joel Funditas, instructor at the Electrical Industry Training Centers of Alberta. Joel is a master electrician and electrical safety codes officer at the Electrical Vehicle Training Centers of Alberta. He teaches solar photovoltaic systems and electrical vehicle infrastructure training program courses. He has been involved in the electrical industry for the past 20 years and is currently working for the Inspections Group as an electrical inspector right here in the city of Edmonton and surrounding areas. Welcome, Joel.
So I'll just do a brief overview of kind of what the Electrical Industry Training Center does. So we kind of take over after the college aspect, and we do training for electricians. One of the programs we do training in is electric vehicles infrastructure. This training program is pretty much the most comprehensive certification that's recognized throughout North America in relation to installing the electric vehicle equipment that you're going to need to charge your car in a residential, commercial, or even industrial basis. This program has been around in Canada since about 2008, and since that time we've actually done approximately, I think, 340 students for a total of over 6,000 hours worth of training to gain certification. There it is. So after, of course, the certification program is done, they actually will take that certification, they can run with it, and of course make sure that all our installations are going to be correct and proper. On top of this, we've actually been doing one of the leading instruction programs or facilities in green energy. We started back in 2009 with solar, and now we've actually done over 28,000 hours worth of training for almost, actually about 2,300 students. So we've been doing this for quite a few years, and I've been involved with this since approximately 2015. And that's a short and sweet what we do.
Do a little bit of a volume test. There we go. All right, thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate the opportunity to chat with the experts on stage here, and we welcome, as we go here, questions from the audience, of course. But to get us started, to help frame the conversation, can you share, just to refresh at least my memory, the process using kind of a central power generation model, the process of electricity transmission from the source to the home to the charging station?
Yeah, so for most of our history, we've had really large generating plants. So we'd have coal plants or natural gas plants that would be producing sort of in terms of their power generation in the hundreds of megawatts. And those would be really heavily centralized locations. And then they'd have high voltage transmission lines going to substations. And then the power there is way too high to be used in the house, thousands of kilovolts. And then they would actually drop that down to a reasonably lower number of volts with the substation, and then they would take that out to all of the different neighborhoods. And then you've probably seen in your back alley or something like that, those round transformers that'll drop that down to the electricity that comes into your house. And then if you've got an electric vehicle, then there'd be a need to take that AC electricity and convert it into DC electricity to go into the battery. So you need to have a car charger. You can't just plug the car right into a socket. You have to actually do some sort of modification of that electricity from AC form to DC.
Thank you. Now, modifications and that process that kind of, maybe in lay terms, is tweaked a bit, but I'm sure that's an understatement, as we get to the charging station. All sounds like great career opportunities all the way along. Can you share what kind of education is involved and career opportunities? And Joel, maybe I'll turn this one to you.
Well, I think over the number of years, we've seen an explosion in the technology when it comes to electric vehicles, starting back about 20 years ago. So a lot of the education here is really geared towards the electrician or the electrical overview of the trades themselves in how to actually deal with all of this. The nice thing about being, into the trade aspect already and having that background, and of course, institutions like NAIT and the colleges really supplement this as well. But we do need, I believe, it's a firm belief here, that we do need supplementary training. With the technology that's coming out, it's not just being the installer anymore. We're even getting into the whole idea of customer relations. And really, that is a big aspect of what today is. The renewable energy is really becoming a very prevalent part of our society. And so, education here and the programs are going to be needed, and added to the existing the portfolio of what we already have.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So we understand that additional information, maybe certification right now, is likely going to be needed and is needed at times. Help me as more of a layperson understand how to get there. What's involved in becoming an electrician to get in the space, get your foot in the door?
So really the best way to start is actually just becoming an electrician at all. And that's, again, is going to be starting an apprenticeship. And of course, there's many different avenues for that. There's pre-apprenticeship courses offered at multiple facilities. I know Nate offers one. Our program, we actually have a 12-week program as well. And that'll actually start the ball rolling towards getting your electrical ticket after 4 years of an apprenticeship. And then after that, I like to say that that's when the opportunity really starts. Once you get that certificate, now all of a sudden you have the opportunity to start diversifying into so many different aspects. And as we're seeing it right now, the electrical field is exploding all the time into new and different ideas. So again, just start as the apprenticeship, start working towards that, and then from there, bad really pun or phrase, but the sky's the limit.
Fantastic. I have a burning follow-up question. What is the difference between an electrician and a lineman? Or is there one?
Well, actually, there's a really big tie between both. So the electrician is typically working in what we call, ironically, low voltage. And that's 750 volts or less. It's not really low in the grand scheme of things. The linemen are the ones working on the high voltage distribution point. So that could be from the generating stations that are going to be at the old coal-fired plants that are converting to natural gas, and that'll be run to our distribution points. And in between, we actually even have a third, our power systems electrician. And they're going to be dealing with the in-between, the substations converting the power. Now, when it comes to the whole idea of the cross-tie between the electrician, power systems, as well as linemen, is we're becoming a little bit more integrated as we go. Because as Dr. Jim here was saying, we're starting to see not just that whole centralized system, but a distributed generation of where we're now generating our own energy on our own homes. So we're actually tying in and we're working all together even more so.
Thank you for that. And maybe one more follow-up question on that line. As we get to that charging station, let's say the charging station, the home, and the modifications, I understand additional education is needed, additional training. Is it a step change in skills when you get your electrician is working at that particular spot in the electricity transmission process?
A little bit to a point, because we always like to think as electricians here, and I've been an electrician for over almost 20 years now. We always think that we're consuming or we're using the power. Well, when we get into the idea of electric vehicles, we are consuming it, but it can also, we're getting to the point where it can be bidirectional, and we can actually use it as a power source. So it is a little bit of a step in the way of thinking, and a little bit of training does have to take place in order to get that integrated feeling of what we are doing.
Thank you. Jim, I'm going to turn to you with my next question. So we talked about power transmission kind of from a conventional source, but can you speak for a minute or two about other sources of electricity, such as maybe solar or even fuel cells? Maybe we'll start with solar.
Sure. So like you were saying, historically almost everything has been large central stations, power plants sending electricity to homes. With solar, you could have large solar plants, for example, making electricity, same model. But on individual homes now, you can put solar on the roof or in a farm out in the field, and that electricity is being generated right on site. And because you're consuming that electricity right on site, a lot of those other fees, I think a lot of people are like the transmission and the distribution fees on your bill are often as big as your electricity fees. But there's a nice little benefit in there that if you're using your own electricity that you've generated, you don't have to pay that T&D piece for that. We'd call it a solar fraction. I kind of showed that slide where solar was dropping really fast in price. And every deployment of solar, every doubling of solar, the cost of solar drops by about 25%. And that's a really interesting learning curve. And we've also seen for lithium-ion batteries, we've seen about the same learning curve. Whereas with hydrogen, there's some challenges with actually generating the hydrogen, getting it through new infrastructure to the endpoint use. The actual fuel cells are going through a similar learning curve, but actually getting the hydrogen to site is not very easy. So I actually think in the short term, maybe in the next 10-year horizon, we're only really going to see in the residential space EVs, battery, solar. When it gets to long distance transportation, that's when we're going to really see that hydrogen being applied and or into like petrochemicals.
Excellent. Sounds like there are opportunities for hydrogen innovation at the moment. And we know Edmonton is a foundational, I would say, community in the innovation space when it comes to hydrogen. Lots happening in the hydrogen space here. So you mentioned batteries. Let's chat about that for a moment. What's involved in deploying batteries or battery production? Is there a component that creates a career opportunity here in the Edmonton community or the broader Alberta?
When we were talking about it, you were talking about very much what the electrician's doing. There's some other folks that are often involved too, and it depends on how deep the use of that battery is. So if it's like a cottage, you're looking for a battery, it's not really substantial in size, you probably don't have to do a lot of design there. But if you're getting into applications where you've got this battery and you want it to do very specific things, which maybe if people have questions we could go into, but when you get into really complicated applications, you might need to get an engineer or an engineering technologist involved. Sort of like if you're going to build a complex house, you're going to get an architect and an engineer involved around that design. But if it's very simple, you could cut them out. So there's a fair number of jobs in that space where you need to have sales, you need to have design, and you need to have customer engagement to figure out what the real needs are. And that's all before the electrician goes in and really does the real work, I guess you'd say. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing that. So when I'm thinking about this innovation happening and the changes required, shall we say, in the trade space, I often think about software. Software seems to be involved in everything. Is there a software component or element that's required in the electric vehicle market? And I know that's a general question. I'd invite you to take it in any direction you like, but I'm thinking we're leaving out some software folks maybe in the conversation. And I'm sure there's a critical role for them as well. Thank you.
Yeah, so historically, like when we started our program up in 2011, you would have bought all the bits and parts separately. So you would have bought the battery separately, you would have bought the controller separately, the inverter separately, et cetera, all the different bits and parts. And you'd have all these different OEMs, so original energy equipment manufacturers, would have all their own protocols and all their own everything, and it was a real pain to get all those pieces to talk together. Mostly what we're seeing now is that companies, large manufacturers, are kind of putting those packages together for you, which really helps. But yeah, we sometimes call them a Franken system, where you're kind of just bolting stuff together and hoping they'll work. And you can spend as much time trying to get the parts to talk to each other as you would spend installing it, right? But if you get into like the commercial space and the industrial space, where you've got like power demand charges and not just the energy charges, you can get into really interesting responses that you have to have the system make, and all of a sudden you're getting into a whole overlay of communications and internet and logic. And so those are taking it up a couple of levels, and I think we're going to see more people getting jobs in that space that understand SCADA and things like that. Thank you.
And I'm reminding the audience that we welcome any questions from the audience as we go. I've got, it seems like 100 questions here, and I'm eager to ask all of them, but please do come forward if you have any questions. We're going to change gears here a little bit. We talk about electric cars and trucks a lot, but what about other vehicles, say rail, or it doesn't need to be agriculture, for example, but larger equipment? Do we see new career opportunities in equipment or rails? And invite either of you to comment.
I think eventually we're going to start seeing this. I mean, realistically, when it comes into light duty vehicles, it's a very easier transition because the infrastructure, such as all the roads, everything is already ready to go. But yeah, it's definitely going to start coming across. We're already seeing medium duty trucks, light duty trucks getting into electrification. And also fuel cell technology is becoming so much more efficient and readily available. We're probably going to start seeing this for larger applications. There definitely is a future, and it's coming sooner than we think, I believe.
Fantastic. Jim, any additional thoughts?
Yeah, we're seeing some really interesting changes with heavy equipment. And so the heavy equipment program, for example, at NATE is now realizing that a lot of those gigantic trucks that they use in Suncor and Syncrude in the oil field, They're now going to digitization, and so those things are driving themselves, and they're also running on electric. And so now all of a sudden you've got somebody who's a heavy equipment technologist, and we talked about this before, where the rate of change is actually accelerating significantly. All post-secondaries and other trainers are seeing this. And so you've got a heavy equipment technologist that's used to working with all the heavy equipment and bolts that are the size of somebody's head and things like that. But now the power system is electrical in nature with a giant battery and really big electrical cables. And do we need people to be both a journey person HET and a journey person electrician, or could we start carving things off into smaller sub-disciplines? Because that's really expensive to have a dual-ticketed person doing a lot of work. So a lot of institutions now are asking the question, can we create certificates that are after a diploma or certificates that are after a trade, or even have badges with something like a micro-credential that would be still exam, still credential, but just shorter horizons. And that might be really helpful for a lot of people.
Fantastic. Make that transition happen more readily. Do you anticipate that the career evolution or the career path evolution might displace some more traditional opportunities? And I might think of mechanics, for example, or maybe traditional. Dare I say the word traditional, because I'm sure it doesn't quite define it, but a traditional path in the electrical space.
I don't think so. I mean, really, when we take a look and around here, we see the vehicles themselves. A mechanic will always be necessary to work on a vehicle. A wheel is a wheel, a brake is a brake. Just the technology changing behind that is going to be accelerating and changing. So I think then what we're going to start seeing a lot is a lot of continuous upgrading and development of the skill set of the worker. And really, I think it's just going to be more opportunity for everyone involved. I don't think anything is truly going to stop ever ceasing when it comes to a trade or a career path. It's just going to evolve.
Fantastic. Thank you. Now, I'm curious about changing the topic a little bit and thinking about homeowner education for a second. I'm curious about the technology from a homeowner perspective. And I know that different homes were built in different times with different requirements, different codes, and that creates maybe different challenges and restrictions. There's a lot of differences as we look across the different communities within Edmonton. I would like to know, maybe starting, and I want to dive into a few questions in this space, but maybe to start, if I'm looking to purchase an electric vehicle, what should I be thinking from a homeowner perspective, my residents, from that perspective? Please.
Well, the first thing you probably want to take a look at is the infrastructure around your home. So a lot of us are going to have a 100 amp service in our house, or 150 or 200. And from there, we actually have to start making sure that our service size is going to be adequate for what we want to put in. Now, please don't misunderstand that, well, my service might not be large enough, I can't get an electric vehicle. That's furthest from the truth. We might just have to do some extra additional upgrading or other type of equipment installation. So you want to start exploring those options and really find a good contractor to really help with this.
Excellent point. So if I'm here shopping for an electric vehicle today, I should be also thinking about a contractor. Perhaps maybe some of the dealerships can advise on contractors who'd be experienced in that space. Where would I go? Is it a matter of just Googling? I'm thinking, I'm excited. I see an electric vehicle today. I really want to make the purchase. I really want to make the switch. And now I'm thinking about my home because it's kind of an afterthought. Where do I reach out?
Some of the manufacturers of vehicles do have their preferred contractors. So, for example, if you're buying a Ford electric vehicle, their preferred contractor is Sunrun, which only operates in the U.S. But you can get a hold of. I think the dealer is a really good place to start. But I did phone Sunrun to kind of map out some of this ahead of time, and they also are connected with installers in other countries that are sort of the downstream they're preferred. So that's a bit of a starting point. I think you got it right with talking to the people that are selling you the car in the first place. But I think a lot of the electrical contractors that are thinking about renewables and thinking about some of these more modern things would be probably your solar companies are also very aggressively thinking about energy storage for the home as well as vehicles. So Yeah, there's just I'm on the board, as you said, of Solar Alberta. Just a shout out to them. They actually do keep a registry of all of the different solar installer companies in Alberta that have signed a declaration of a certain level of professionalism. And if they contravene that, they can actually be removed. So I'd recommend, if you're looking for a company, even if it's not solar, I think reaching out, going to the Solar Alberta website and having a look at some of the lists of who's doing renewables. Those are probably the people that are right on the cutting edge and would be doing a good job.
Fantastic. So I might not just think beyond the connection point for my vehicle, my home, but I can also think about helping make my own home, position it better to be a source, if you will, through solar, for example. Okay. That leads me to my next question. Can you share your story as you renovate or retrofit, maybe is the better word, your own home?
Yeah, so like you said, we're renovating our house to be net zero. You mentioned it before, it's a 1940s house, and we're retrofitting it to be net zero. So that means that it'll generate as much energy on an annual basis as it consumes. But we made some mistakes along the way. We got ahead of ourselves on a couple of pieces. We thought, let's put solar on the roof. That'll take care of all of our electrical loads, like our fridge and our electric stove and our hot water tank, etc. All the plug loads, the computer. But we put that on the roof, and then when we decided to do a bigger job of making our house better performing, we had to take it all off the roof again because the roof wasn't big enough. And so, the sort of sequencing things is actually becoming an interesting challenge. But we've got a 1940s house. It's a 2-story building, and essentially what we're trying to do is put a giant sleeping bag over it to help it stay warmer. And then we got rid of our natural gas line. So basically what they did is, it's a system called Energy Sprong. It's out of the Netherlands. My wife is Dutch, and as she would say, if you're not Dutch, you're not much. And so I managed to marry in. That was good. So my kids are okay. But basically, other than smelling like cheese, the key thing is they scan the whole house. And once they've scanned the house, they go to a factory and they actually build all the walls, put the windows in them, drive them to our house, and then used a crane and lifted them into place and bolted them on. They extended the roof, they filled it all with insulation, and that is making it so our house uses 70 to 80% less energy. And so right away, if you're using 70 to 80% less energy, we cut the gas line. It makes me nervous, I got to admit, no more natural gas, but we're going to heat the house actually on an air source heat pump. It's basically an air conditioner that can run in both directions. And then we'll put more solar on, and we should, hopefully, be able to completely take care of all of our electrical needs, including the heating of the house, based off our own solar.
Wow, this isn't just a matter of changing out the floor plan a little bit. And
it was a little bit, but we didn't have to go inside and rip stuff up, which is really nice, right? It was just make it somewhere else and bolt it on. So.
All right. Well, you're the expert in this space, and you're well connected. Where would somebody start if they wanted to go down that path themselves? And what's your recommendation on if somebody wants to tackle it themselves?
So that was house number 1 by this method in all of North America, and so you can't just phone somebody quite yet, but the funding came from SSRIA, which is a Sustainability Construction Industry Association, and they're wanting to take all those learnings and start applying it to this system. But there are other ways. There's many companies that are sort of in that green space that will do a bit more of a standard thing of maybe rip off the sheathing on the outside of the house and bolt on a little bit more wood and add more insulation. There's a gentleman down in Calgary, Solar Homes, I believe is his company's name, who will add foam to the outside. But the key is, what you don't want to do is put on 1 inch of foam and then put your siding on. Like that would be very incremental. If you're going to do something big, you kind of should do something big, because if you put 1 inch of insulation on and then put cladding on, and then later decide to make it better, you basically have to take that all off, which is that sort of wasted thing that I had done. So.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing. Let's go to the audience for a question, please.
Jim, how long will it take you to get your money back?
My strongest recommendation is to not do home renovations when the price of lumber is very, very high. So I had run the numbers. It does have a couple of caveats that I should tell you about. One is that right now there's a price on carbon pollution. So as long as the price on carbon pollution, if we're still having to pay for the privilege of putting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, then my payback period is better. If they decide that everybody can pollute into the atmosphere for free, and they take away the carbon tax, in my payback period versus just keeping a natural gas furnace is not as effective. It was the very first of its kind in North America, so there was also a grant that we received. And then we made our house look really nifty, and so there's additional costs. So I actually cannot give you a number. There's just too many caveats. Yeah.
Thank you. We're going to go to another question from the audience. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah. Where do you see the infrastructure funding that needs to be put in to provide all of the charging stations for these electric vehicles and the energy source that we need when everybody comes home at 5 p.m. and plugs in their electric car to charge it overnight or charge it in the 4 hours that they can if they have a quick charge? I think that's one of the biggest issues I see in electric vehicle electrification, because we're still generating electricity with natural gas and we're still producing carbon dioxide.
It's a fantastic question, and it has a lot to do. California's already experiencing it, and Hawaii was already experiencing these challenges too. So Hawaii's response was to actually, and a number of, Alberta is actually one of the few locations that does not actually have what's called time of use billing. So we just have a contract, and if we use electricity at any point in the entire month or billing period, it's the same price for us if we've got a long-term contract. If you're on the regulated rate, get off of the regulated rate. I think electricity last week was like 70 cents a kilowatt hour. The government would like you to find a retailer. Anyway, and so those places have these higher costs of electricity at different times when there's more consumption, and that helps drive behavior. But a lot of people in those places find that having a little bit of a battery for themselves when they get home, when that's the major peak or that's the major ramp, having a battery in their own home and shifting some of the electricity they bought earlier or generated themselves earlier and shifting it to supper time actually helps them avoid that high cost. Them avoiding that high cost by using their own electricity or electricity they bought from the grid earlier also takes the pressure down on everybody else in the grid as well. And so that's some of what's going to probably be coming to a jurisdiction near you as well. There's some conversations happening at the AUC level that's sort of hinting that we might see time of use cost. So the other thing though is to not charge your car the second you walk in the door, is to wait a little bit longer. And so there are a number of programs around the world. Alberta doesn't have a strong, robust one yet, called demand response, where the utility can be given permission by the homeowner, or you could have an aggregator work with a whole bunch of homeowners, and they can actually go, like, reach in digitally to your house and turn your hot water tank down, or turn your air conditioning down, or whatever it might be for a period of time to bring that load down. And in some places they pay you as if you made the electricity. For you to take that pressure off the grid, you get paid for that. So there's lots of stuff. This is like a whole semester of stuff, by the way. So. Well, yeah, charge it when the demand on the grid is not high. Yeah, and if we start doing that, that'll make a lot of sense. Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have one more question from the audience? Thank you.
Yeah, you touched on where you had that 2-year program for solar installation, was it again? I'm sorry. What are the pre-recommendations for that?
Right, so the program actually is 2 years, 4 semesters, and we touch on a whole bunch of different things. Solar generation's one, but wind as well, microhydro. We get into more efficient buildings and how you can design that building. So we actually teach like energy modeling of how much does the building consume based on what the architect asked, make recommendations, make some changes, and then figure out how you heat the home or cool the home or whatever it might be. So it's actually a pretty intensive 4 semesters of a lot of integration. I'd say probably 20% of our alumni, once they've graduated, do go on to join the electrical trades as well. So there's a lot of blurring of the lines for sure. And in explaining the background of our program, I did lose the thread of his question. Could you just give that to me one more time?
He was looking for thoughts on the training program, the path toward that particular designation.
Oh yeah, and so to get into the program, we deliver. The student would, and we've got a lot of adult students. So I'd say our average age is like 28. We've got some people right out of high school. We've got some people who are in their 50s, on their second career. We need high school physics 20, chemistry 20. Math 30-1, and any grade 12 English. And the grade 12's English is important because people might be working with clients needing to write up reports, so that's important. Needing to have a basics of how to manipulate math, very similar to what you would be doing by the time your fourth period electrician is very critical. So we need to have some degree of mathematical capability.
So from a career development or opportunity perspective, if I'm in high school or looking at that career change, electrician would probably be one of the paths of choice for sure.
I would say the major paths would be electrician, a 2-year diploma, or if you've got a lot of patience, an electrical engineering or a structural engineering degree. But of course we're going from 4 years, but you're getting paid for many of those years because you're learning on the job, and you get EI. A 2-year program, which is nice because it's shorter to get that base, but you're a student and paying. Or the 4-year engineering degree would be another really good way to go, but you're looking at a full 4 years, and it's usually not as specialized. But I think your point about once you've got that base, whichever of those 3 base knowledges you've got, everybody should be expecting that there's going to be for the rest of our careers, there's going to be an ongoing retraining.
Fantastic. We're going to take one more question from the audience.
Hi, thank you so much. Someone still new to this space. You've talked a lot about different organizations, groups, and I see a lot in this room as well. And so my question would be, as someone new learning about this... That's a good one. So, would be, is there a one source or somewhere that Albertans can go to for this information, or an advocacy group that has all this information kind of collected together so that if I am looking at this, where can I go?
Well, if I might, what a wonderful way to help wrap up our conversation today. Like, where do we go next? Where do we get more information? Fantastic. Over to you, gentlemen.
I don't think really right now we kind of have a whole one stop fits all kind of solution. The best bet is honestly the internet. It has a lot of different resources. A lot of the colleges will offer a lot of different solutions into different paths, as well as private training institutions and corporations as well.
And I'd also say that if you have an idea of the sector that you'd like to work in, like do that background about what is the art of the possible. Like, we don't really talk about buildings very much here because of course it's about cars here, but like examine the field and then maybe even reach out to some of the companies that work in that field and say, I'm actually interested in this field, I'd like to know more, and do that research from those companies that are seeming to be the leaders. And then once you've heard a little bit, start pinging those various associations that are training, whether it's post-secondary or Solar Alberta actually has tons of training too.
Thank you so much. Thank you to our panelists, to our experts. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. I'm not sure if you'll be available for a few minutes after the presentation. Wonderful. Thank you to the audience. Appreciate the questions. And I think that takes us to full time. Thanks, everyone.